Alcohol kills more people than war every year, yet billions still trust it to celebrate, relax, and feel less alone. Alcohol is the most dangerous substance on earth. It kills more people every year than wars, terrorism, and car accidents combined. And yet, on Friday nights, at weddings, at family dinners, we raise our glasses to it, smiling, laughing, celebrating, as if it were a trusted friend. That contradiction is what first unsettled me, not in a dramatic way, no tragedy, no personal crisis, just a quiet moment of realization that lingered longer than it should have. I remember sitting at a small gathering with friends, watching the room slowly change after the first round of drinks. Voices grew louder, laughter became easier, shoulders relaxed. Strangers leaned closer, speaking more freely than they had just minutes before. It looked harmless, it even looked beautiful, but something in the back of my mind kept whispering a question I couldn't ignore. What exactly are we putting into our bodies when we drink alcohol? As someone who has always been drawn to biology, to the hidden machinery that keeps us alive, I've learned that every substance has a story. Every molecule has a purpose. So I did what curiosity always pushes me to do. I started digging into the science, not to judge anyone, not to scare myself, but to understand, and what I found was deeply unsettling. Alcohol was never meant for humans. In nature, it is produced by microscopic organisms, yeast, not as a gift, but as a weapon. When yeast ferments sugar, it releases alcohol into its environment to poison competing microbes. It is, quite literally, a chemical designed to kill living cells. That realization stopped me cold. Because suddenly, the drink in our hands was no longer just a symbol of celebration. It was a biological toxin, one that billions of people willingly consume every single day, often without a second thought. And that is the paradox I cannot stop thinking about. How did a substance created to destroy life become one of the most trusted tools for human connection? To answer that, we have to start somewhere much closer to home, inside your own body, at the exact moment the first sip touches your lips. To understand why alcohol feels so comforting, we first have to follow its journey, not through culture or tradition, but through the fragile circuitry of the human brain. The moment you take that first sip, something remarkably fast begins to unfold inside you. Alcohol slips through the lining of your stomach and small intestine and enters your bloodstream with almost no resistance. Unlike many substances your body struggles to absorb, alcohol moves freely, dissolving in both water and fat. That means it can travel nearly everywhere. Within minutes, it reaches the organ that defines who you are, your brain. What fascinated me most when I first learned this is how limited your body really is in handling alcohol. Your liver, the organ responsible for detoxifying harmful substances, works tirelessly to break alcohol down. But it has a strict speed limit, roughly one small sip every 5 minutes, that's it. No shortcuts, no acceleration. So if you drink faster than that, which most of us do without thinking, alcohol begins to build up in your blood, quietly overwhelming your system. And then the changes begin. Inside your brain, billions of neurons communicate through precise electrical and chemical signals. These signals allow you to think clearly, control impulses, and read the emotions of the people around you. Alcohol interferes with that delicate communication. It doesn't shut the brain off, it softens it, slows it, makes the signals less sharp. One region is especially sensitive, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment and self-control. When alcohol dampens its activity, the cautious voice inside your head becomes quieter, doubts fade, social anxiety loosens its grip. You speak more freely, you laugh more easily, you feel, for a moment, like a lighter version of yourself. But what stayed with me the most is not just that alcohol reduces fear, it also releases endorphins, powerful chemicals that reinforce connection and belonging. Your brain interprets this as reward, as relief, as social success. And that is the biological trick hidden beneath the pleasant warmth of a drink. Alcohol doesn't create courage. It temporarily lowers the biological barriers that protect you. But the more I studied this process, the more another question began to bother me, not about what alcohol does in a single moment, but about what happens when those moments repeat, quietly, over years. Biology rarely punishes us immediately. It is patient. It keeps a record. Each time alcohol enters the body, your liver begins the same familiar task, breaking it down so you can survive. But in doing so, it produces a substance called acetaldehyde, a chemical far more toxic than alcohol itself. When I first learned that, I paused. It felt almost counterintuitive that the very system designed to protect us must temporarily create something more dangerous before it can neutralize the threat. And that threat does not disappear without consequences. Over time, repeated exposure to acetaldehyde begins to leave marks inside the body. Tiny, invisible injuries to cells. Small disruptions to DNA. Gradual inflammation that you cannot feel. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is slow biology at work. The brain is one of the most sensitive organs in this process. Neurons, the delicate cells responsible for memory, attention, and learning, rely on strong connections to function properly. But chronic alcohol exposure weakens those connections. Messages travel less efficiently. Memories take longer to form. Focus becomes more fragile. Not overnight, but year by year, the brain adapts to a slightly damaged environment. What unsettled me most was how ordinary this can look from the outside. You can still go to work. You can still hold conversations. You can still feel mostly fine. Meanwhile, inside your body, changes are quietly accumulating. The liver stores more fat, blood pressure creeps upward, sleep becomes less restorative. The risk of cancer slowly increases, not because of one reckless night, but because of repeated exposure to a substance that the body must constantly defend against. And perhaps the most sobering realization is this: the body rarely sends an early warning. It keeps functioning, compensating, adjusting, until one day it cannot. That is when biology finally speaks, and by then, it is often too late to negotiate. And once I began to accept how quietly alcohol could reshape the body, I realized something even more unsettling. Its effects rarely stay contained within a single person. Biology does not exist in isolation. Every brain, every decision, every reaction spills outward into the world around us. That is what makes alcohol different from many other risks we take. When alcohol changes the chemistry of one mind, it can change the safety of everyone nearby. I remember reading accident reports late one night while researching this topic. Page after page, the pattern repeated itself. A driver misjudged a turn. A reaction came a second too late. A small mistake became irreversible. What struck me most was not just the number of lives lost, but the quiet tragedy hidden inside the details. Many of the victims had done nothing wrong. They had followed the rules. They had simply crossed paths with someone whose brain was no longer functioning at full capacity. That realization shifted my perspective from personal health to shared responsibility. Alcohol also alters how we handle emotion. When the brain's control centers are suppressed, impulses become louder than reason. Frustration escalates faster, words come out sharper. Situations that might have been resolved with patience can spiral into conflict. Around the world, a significant portion of violent incidents, from bar fights to domestic disputes, involve alcohol in the background, quietly lowering the threshold between irritation and aggression. But the example that stayed with me the longest was one I encountered while reading about prenatal development. During pregnancy, alcohol passes directly from the mother's bloodstream into the developing fetus. The fetal brain, still forming its delicate networks, has almost no defense against toxins. Exposure during this critical period can lead to lifelong challenges in learning, behavior, and emotional regulation. The consequences begin before the child has even taken a first breath. What makes all of this especially difficult to recognize is how normal alcohol looks in daily life. It is present at celebrations, dinners, and social gatherings, woven into routines that feel harmless. Yet beneath that familiarity lies a simple biological truth. Alcohol does not just influence the person who drinks it, it influences everyone connected to them. And after tracing alcohol through the brain, the body, and the lives it touches beyond us, I kept circling back to one final question that refused to leave my mind. If the risks are so clear, why has humanity held on to alcohol for thousands of years? The answer, I realized, is not hidden in chemistry alone. It is hidden in something much more human. Connection. Human beings are social creatures, but we are also deeply self-conscious ones. We worry about how we sound, how we look, whether we belong. Even in a crowded room, many of us carry a quiet tension inside, a subtle fear of rejection, of awkward silence, of saying the wrong thing. That tension is not a flaw, it is biology trying to protect us from social danger. Alcohol in small amounts softens that tension, it lowers the volume of the inner critic. It reduces the sense of threat in unfamiliar situations. Conversations flow more easily, laughter comes quicker, strangers feel less intimidating. For a moment, the barriers that separate us from others seem to fade, and connection feels effortless. That is why alcohol has remained woven into human culture for centuries, not because people ignore the risks, but because they value the sense of belonging it can create. Yet something interesting is happening in the modern world. Younger generations are drinking less than their parents did. Surveys across many countries show a steady decline in heavy drinking among teenagers and young adults. On the surface, this looks like progress for public health, and in many ways it is. Fewer injuries, fewer long-term diseases, fewer lives disrupted. But at the same time, another pattern has been quietly emerging. Loneliness is rising. More people report feeling isolated, fewer people meet friends face to face. Social gatherings happen less often. Technology keeps us connected digitally, yet many of us feel emotionally distant. Removing alcohol did not remove the human need for connection, it simply exposed how deeply the need still exists. That realization changed the way I think about this entire subject. The future may not be about eliminating alcohol entirely. It may be about learning how to build confidence, trust, and community without relying on a chemical shortcut. The deepest lesson I took from exploring the science of alcohol is this: biology explains our impulses, but awareness gives us choice. Alcohol is not simply a drink, it is a shortcut to comfort, confidence, and connection. The real power in modern life is learning to build those feelings intentionally, without depending on something that quietly works against our health. We can start small, notice our habits, strengthen real relationships, protect our bodies, and choose environments that support clarity instead of escape. Understanding how our biology works allows us to live more deliberately, and that is where lasting freedom begins. Now I'm curious about your experience. What is one situation where you usually feel the urge to drink, celebration, stress, or social pressure? Please share your answer politely in the comments so everyone can learn from different perspectives. And if this video helped you see alcohol in a new way, consider subscribing to support the channel and keep meaningful science stories coming.